Today on Locked On Blue Jackets, we are talking about a player that could be a perfect fit for the Blue Jackets, but will he fall to the second round? That's what we're going to talk about today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and also over on YouTube, as well as the SiriusXM app. I just want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Like I said at the top of the show, I've got Joel Henderson back from Puck Preps FC Hockey to talk about Samuel Honzek of the Vancouver Giants, which is yet another really great WHL kid. I've got Joel Henderson of Puck Preps back to talk about Samuel Honzek, another really great WHL kid that, like I said, I think Blue Jackets fans are going to really love. What we have to do is hope that he falls to 34th. So I'm just going to jump right into my conversation with Joel because, again, he knows much more than I do. I just work here. The onslaught of good WHL prospects just keeps on coming. We're doing another WHL prospect today. We've got Samuel Honzek. And I've got Joel Henderson back because no one else knows more about the WHL prospects. He's been covering them since they were like 15. So I feel like he's the perfect guy to talk to. Let's talk about Honzek, who I'm not going to lie, fully assumed was just a Canadian kid playing in the WHL. This is his first year in North America. He came over from Slovakia, which I feel like that's pretty unusual to have someone come over before the draft and just play 1 year in the WHL as a European.
It definitely does happen. It is definitely, I don't think we see it as often for players who are as good as Samuel is, but it was a good position for him. He's somebody that with his size as well, I think the WHL is a good place for him to kind of learn more of a smaller ice game, to endure physicality, to be able to thrive against it. I think it was a good move for someone with his skill set specifically.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What kind of player is Samuel Honzek? What are teams getting if they draft him?
So right off the bat, you just have to understand he's huge. He is huge, and he has a very long skating stride. So for potential wise, like when you watch him move, there's some similarities like with a Nick Bukestad kind of player when he's out there, the way that he moves on the ice. He's just very big, very lanky. And not only that, but he is very, very smart in his puck protection. And so Samuel Honzek's best ability right now is being able to protect the puck until an outlet is there. So he got a lot of his points for Vancouver by just people simply not being able to take the puck from him. And it wasn't like he was setting up premier plays. He was just continuing them. It was just when they wanted to get the puck from Samuel Honzek, when he was bursting into the zone and he felt pressure on the side, he would move to a wider base stance. He would split his stride and he would protect his puck at the reach. And he's a player that has a lot of great vision. And so whether it was a simple back pass, a pass across the zone, a cycle around, a play to the point, he kept possession. He settled down the play for his team, and he gave them opportunities to establish position in the offensive zone. And that will be an avenue that can continue up pro ranks. He's going to be a very hard player to take the puck from when he moves to that split stride.
Yeah, that was when I was doing like my preliminary research for this episode. A lot of the things I saw were impossible to take the puck from him, which feels like a pretty good, like we need him to do something with the puck, but if you just can't get the puck from him, then at least no one else is doing anything, and also he feels like and this might be just entirely conjecture from me, but he feels like a player that would fit in really well in Columbus. He feels like a player that Jarmo Kekalainen specifically would love to draft, just based on kind of the decisions that he makes in trades and free agency over the past couple of years. And so I don't know. I figured I should probably get to know this guy because he might be coming the Blue Jackets way if he falls. He's another guy that like we talked about last episode. He's sitting in that tier with Braden Yeager and Nate Danielson. Now, Elite Prospect has him listed as a center. However, I understand he's played wing basically all season. Is he just listed as a center to try and trick teams into taking him higher in the draft, or?
I don't know why people have him specifically listed at center. I guess he could play center. I think he has played center at different times, if I'm mistaken. I've just always seen him as a winger. He drifts to the wing. He's a guy that he can play in the middle of the ice as well, especially like when he was playing for the World Juniors. He was forechecking. He was very much being in the middle of the ice as he was moving up the ice. But I think he's just naturally a better fit as a big puck possession winger.
Yeah. Is it possible he's listed as a center just because he is enormous? I feel like people assume that big players are centers.
Well, but he's also very responsible. He's a very smart player. And like I said, his skating, he plays at length. He plays positionally very well. He attacks his stick very well. Like if somebody said, we want you to learn how to be a centerman, because we want you to be a centerman, like I think he could be a centerman. That wouldn't surprise me. He would have to work on his agility. He would have to work on some of those things to just continue to adjust quicker. But when you're 6'4" with a huge reach and you know how to not take penalties, to not just put your stick in bad spots, I think it's possible. He's just a very smart, large human being who doesn't like giving the opposition the puck.
I mean, I respect that. It's not a terrible archetype to have. Especially, I love it when players are big and don't take penalties, because I feel like the Blue Jackets had a handful of guys who were big and also took a lot of penalties last season. But I want to, because we talked about Nate Danielson last episode. If you have the choice between Honzek and Danielson, who are you drafting?
Personally, I think I'm taking the swing on Honzek, but it is close. Like it's pretty close in my rankings for them. They might, I don't even know if I was to make an actual list, they might even be back to back. The reality with Honzek that I think is like I talked about this earlier, one of his best strengths is him protecting the puck at reach and settling down. But I think that is potentially his biggest weakness from propelling him forward too, is that when he senses pressure, he goes into puck protection mode. And so what I want him to do as a 6'4" winger is to continue to move his feet through that pressure.
These dudes,
skate through that pressure, especially as you're moving along the outside. And he was doing that more at the end of the year. You can see that he's still getting used to it. It's still like, sometimes he takes shots from a distance where he doesn't need to, but it's continuing to keep his feet moving, which will make him burst through potential layers as he moves forward too. And so it's a bit of a habitual thing. It's not that he, it's not that he couldn't do this, in the same way that some other guys do, but I just think it's about just kind of breaking the habit and just being a bit more aggressive and keeping the feet moving. And you could see throughout the year that he was beginning to do that, that he was starting to implement that more into his game, which is scary because he can drag the puck at reach. He's very, very good once he gets into tight areas too. His hands are very nice, so he can kind of stick handle and drag pucks around reach and tuck it in backdoor off a breakaway kind of things. So if he can implement more of that power game into his game, it's really going to kind of break another layer for him.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you talk about kind of him being a little passive, and you want him to kind of exert, I guess, his size a little bit more. I was talking to Hedy Kalakesh of Double Prospects, Locked On NHL Prospects. We had a really interesting conversation about Bradley Nadeau being a small player who plays like he hasn't always been small.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but you've been covering the WHL and BC hockey for a while. Was he a guy that was like, did he just get did he just grow a lot? Like, do you get the vibe that you think he was a small player that suddenly got a growth spurt and he's kind of still catching up to that, or?
No, I just think he's a European, and I mean that, like, you know what I mean? Like it's like when you're talking about super aggressive Europeans, it's generally a bit of the exception, I guess. Okay, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's just like it's more about puck skills and finesse and positioning and settling plays and being fluid on your skating strides, like it's more just naturally that. And so like Honzek was one where he was playing, I believe the season before he was playing, in a men's league at 16. So he's always kind of had, or in the last number of years, he's kind of had that size to be able to kind of propel him forward. And in the WHL, it was just like, he wasn't naturally aggressive really either, but people didn't really mess with him either because he's a big dude.
Enormous,
Like right. Like he kind of got left alone a little bit. And so he's a guy that I think, as well as, as he moves up layers, moves through the AHL, moves in the NHL, I think he's just going to naturally kind of round out his sense of aggression as far as positioning, board battles, those types of things. But it's just specifically in those senses about, like, I think, when he's backdoor, seeing that play where he can really squeeze in and jump down low and like demand that he's going to, get that one-timer opportunity, or just off the rush where he's got possession, where he doesn't immediately have to kind of go to, a safety approach, where he can start to take chances and power through those skills and get used to having pressure on his shoulder while he continues to move his feet. Those are just going to be things that he comes over time by just breaking that habit. And, but he's also a person at a very baseline that we talked about with other players. I think Samuel Honzek at a baseline, he can certainly play a bottom six role for a team because he's very smart, very puck possession. He's huge. So there's multiple different ways that you could use a player like that throughout the lineup. So it's not necessarily he has a high floor. It's just about, in this range of tier of players, who do you think is potentially going to break through that? And the one thing that just gives me hope about Samuel is I'm just starting to see those signs where he's starting to do it. It's still a longer way off. He's still not as comfortable being that guy who's aggressively taking the puck to the net all the time. He's going to have to kind of get used to that a little bit more, but he's starting to break those habits. So I think there's more layers to come from him. I don't think he's a player that's going to stagnate.
In a minute, we're going to talk more about Honzek, but first I've got to tell you all about Birddogs, because they are the most comfortable shorts you will ever wear. Like, that's not hyperbole. That's not me just saying that because they sponsor the show. Like, I'm angry about how comfortable these shorts are. They are phenomenal. I have been wearing them basically every day since I got them. It's been like 85 degrees here, so definitely shorts weather. You wear them when I'm lying around the house, or whether I'm going for a walk, or going to the gym, or doing literally anything. Birddogs are perfect. And what's even better is if you go to lockedonnhl.com, go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl, you're going to get a free Yeti-style Birddogs tumbler with every purchase. Once again, that is birddogs.com/lockedonnhl for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You're not going to want to take your Birddogs off, we promise. Do you think he goes back to the WHL next? Oh, can he play in the AHL? Or is he
I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer. I think he can play I'm pretty sure he can play in the AHL.
I was like, he's European, he can play in the AHL.
Yeah,
but now I'm like, no, he plays at the season.
If he's coming back,
or not. But
without checking, I think he's committed to playing again for the Vancouver Giants. Gotcha. So
he probably just returns to the
yeah, but I could be wrong. But I think
maybe the best thing for him is to take that step. But
yeah. So people listening right now, you can just check on your phones and be like, "Yeah, you idiot."
You can yell at the screen.
So it's
put it in the comments. But be nice about it.
I think he's coming back to Vancouver. I think. Yeah. But also, once again, teams. Sometimes it's just like teams are like, "We'd rather have you here," and then they go, "Okay," and that ends up being what it is.
That makes sense. I want to. This is obviously an episode all about Samuel Honzek, but I thought while we have Joel here, let's check in on, I believe, the only remaining WHL prospect that the Blue Jackets have, Denton Mateychuk, who, as I recall, our profile last year, you said of the three WHL defensemen, he was your least favorite, and then I believe he was the first one drafted. So, Oh no, that's a lie. Kevin Korchinski went 7th overall somehow. Yeah. But let's check in with Mateychuk. Have you been watching him much this season? Have you seen anything to like either vindicate your thoughts that he went too high, or have you kind of reconsidered anything? Or
it's it's funny how when your lens is, because it's like pick out of these three. It's like, sure, he's my least favorite, but he's a very good player. Like,
right? No, I know.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm not saying that you can't.
He's a very good player. I mean, he's a point-per-game defenseman in the WHL, right?
I'm sure we did Korchinski, Pickering, and Mateychuk back to back, and you were like, well, this one's my least favorite of the three, but he's still very, very good. And then obviously he was the one the Blue Jackets picked. But
yeah, I still think I still think between the three players it is close long term, specifically because Denton and Owen. Swift Current was also a team that kind of really struggled again this year, and Owen has worked on some of the stuff that he's worked on too, but it's coming along slowly too. Like he wasn't gonna absolutely explode. Like he's a player that it's gonna be, let's see how good he can get after kind of 4 years or whatever. Denton changed, I think, a bit of his playing style this year, just the way that, and I think it just came with the way that that Moose Jaw was naturally flowing their offense. I found when I was watching him quite a bit, he wasn't as pushing pace and active as he was in his years past. He was more considering working on his defensive game, his positioning, those types of things. I think it's this was a more settled, like I haven't talked to him personally. I haven't talked with this, but in my mind, if he said like, no, I had these things in the back of my mind that Columbus wanted me to work on, and I've been working on them all year. Like that's kind of what the year that I think he had. I think this year was a step in the right direction of being a more well-rounded defenseman. I think generally, as far as him though, it is just curious to me, like you said, we can't get into it here, but Columbus took a very different approach to the way that they're going to have their defensemen this year, right? So they decided they're in win now. The reason that I said I didn't think Denton would end up a Blue Jacket is because I said, I'm like, I think he might fit a role that's already there. The Beans, the Boakfists, those types of players. And even now, I'm not sure about the role of some of those players moving forward too in this group, specifically, with bringing in some big names and bringing in some bodies.
I think the Blue Jackets have 10 defensemen fighting for 6 spots right now. And if you assume that Werenski, Provorov, Severson and Gabranson take 4 of them, then that's like 6 guys fighting for those 2 last spots, which is
right. And if you're someone, if you're someone like Bean or Boakfist or those kind of guys, like what is your role now on this team? Yeah. Like, are you running a second power play being a guy at the bottom, or is that going to Provorov and or Severson, or you know what I mean? Like, are you kind of, so it's right now Columbus is a very unique team as far as like, it seemed like they were collecting defensemen, and now they're kind of like,
they have too many, and they're like, oh no,
we would like other defensemen now. Like they kind of just decided, we can't wait for these guys. Like we can't wait for Corson Ceulemans, or we can't wait for Denton, or we can't wait for some of these other guys to see if they might fit. We have to get better, and they decided to pull the trigger on some deals. So I don't know what what it means for these guys down the line, but I think Denton's projection is still kind of in that same road. He could be, he could potentially fill a role as a top 4 defenseman somewhere down the line. He just has to, I would say he's now on the road of just getting better every year. Like he improved his defensive game. He still has to improve aspects of his defensive game, in my opinion, but he's on the road of like, if he gets better every year, if every year he gets a little bit stronger, he adds a little bit more, dynamics to his game. He's somebody that it will just kind of project nicely into, maybe a bottom 4 defenseman for a team, and just slowly move up the rungs that way.
Yeah, I mean, the good news about Mateychuk specifically is that he's a very young player in his draft class. Like, he's still 18 now. He doesn't turn 19 until July. So I believe that means he's still got 2 years of WHL eligibility.
I haven't thought about it, but yeah, maybe. I haven't thought about it.
A lot of questions about this WHL business here, but
my brain is like,
at least, I'm sure he has definitely at least one. So like, they can afford to be patient with him, I guess, until they're kind of forced to put him in the AHL or make a decision with him in the NHL or whatever. But
the thing is too, I think he's a guy that would do well with having a couple years in the AHL anyway.
Right.
So it's like I said, for someone like that, he's a guy that he has some natural abilities that will help him to break away. He has his skating stride, which helps him separate from opponents. He does have a heavier shot, so he can kind of burst through those layers, and so he's slowly adding more strength and stuff too, to be able to kind of endure in more situations and be more of a well-rounded pro player. So that's what I mean about just kind of like getting better every year. If he adds a little bit more strength, a little bit more elements to his shot, a little bit more defensive detail as far as positioning and just establishing around the net, like all of those things are just going to be good. And how you do that is just by learning how to be a pro in the AHL. And, because more is demanded of you, there's higher competition, it's physical every day. And so I think for someone like him, it's a really easy path, but I also understand why the way that Columbus has kind of built their roster now, that they just go like, can we accelerate our back end? Like, can we find a couple of bodies? And they really did. And they went out and just said, like, let's see if this works.
Yeah.
And maybe if it doesn't, and they decide to trade somebody away or whatever, they do have some guys that, you know, are a few years away that can come in and fight for spots too. So but also with that, I mean, as they're kind of moving in, you know, defensemen, especially guys that can fill roles, they don't lose their value either. So depending on what they want to do, if they want to make any of those guys on the roster or any of these prospects as potential trade chips to bring in players. I mean, you know, Denton is not, you know, crazily lost any sense of value. I think he's just this year he showed he matured a little bit. He got a little bit better in some of the areas he needed to, and he's still a very good prospect.
Yeah, I remember being really excited watching him and Jiricek together at I think it was the prospect tournament that they do every year, and being like, oh, that's going to be, in like 5 years' time, that's going to be a really fun defense pairing. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for Mateychuk, but I'm not going to expect to see him in a Blue Jackets jersey anytime soon.
No, I don't think so. And I mean, like me coming from the WH as well, like you talking about, you know, people moving on or whatever, you know, Stanislav Svozil is another guy that puts himself in that mix too. So there's
Stanislav Svozil. I think he's going to be so good.
And so that's what I mean, right? Like, and so the Blue Jackets, like, you know, coming from other fan bases, I mean, when I just did another podcast the other night, talking about the Calgary Flames back end and the prospects that they have. And it's like, you know what I mean? And so they have two that could play but probably won't.
Oh, yikes.
You know what I mean? And so like coming to Columbus and
so
being
like, it's a really good problem to have of, we have too many good, promising young defensemen, you know?
Yeah.
But
at this point in time, it's like, you know, the thing is now it's like you said, it's a great prospect or the great problem of like, do we have to make room for a good player who's forcing himself into our lineup? Like what a problem to have. So
in a minute, I'm going to tell you more about Samuel Honzek, and we're also going to talk a little bit about Denton Mateychuk, who is the sole remaining WHL prospect for the Blue Jackets. But first, I'm going to tell you about Gametime, because I don't know about you, I am always stressed about, everything, but I get stressed about buying tickets. I want to get good seats. I don't want to pay $1 million, and Gametime is perfect because they let me get good seats for less than other ticketing apps. They are the place for last minute deals. You don't have to plan months in advance. They got deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You can get deals on football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Gametime guarantee means you're always going to get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
So hopefully this ends up being a net positive for Columbus, right? Like, because nothing, these things are sure things, and Columbus is coming out with some rocky years and really has to kind of put the pieces together as how to find the right glue for this team. But for someone like Denton, I mean, he's probably looking around and going to prospect camp being like, there's a lot of bodies here, you know? And so, but the reality is for someone like him, you just have to focus on getting better every day and the rest will sort itself out.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like the Blue Jackets they're in a weird position. And again, this is not an episode about the Blue Jackets blue line, because I could do so many episodes about that. But if it falls through this season and turns out that it doesn't work, it's not like the Blue Jackets have emptied the cupboard entirely to get this decor. You know, they can move some guys around, they can plug some guys in. So they've got some flexibility with it. So I was very kind of doom and gloom when these moves started happening. Like, no, we have so many good young defensemen. I want to see them play. But hindsight and reacting less than, you know, more than 12 minutes later, I think has been good to kind of look and be like, okay, no, this isn't the end of the world.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the reality is if you have Gaudreau now, Patrick Laine now, Kent Johnson coming quickly, like
I wonder if it's some of the prospects are getting better quicker than they thought.
Yep.
And the defensemen are taking a little longer, but
and like you said, when you have Alex Texier returning, you've got Kirill Marchenko showing that he can be an everyday NHLer. It just creates options. And so it's about putting together a team. It is about not putting together a bunch of good players on the ice. It's about trying to find team chemistry, night in, night out efforts, ways to win against different style teams and being able to do that. And so with Columbus, I think they knew that this, I think they just kind of recognized that this is a window that they can push.
Mm-hmm.
And when you push, you see it kind of puts feet in the fire a little bit, and you can kind of see, okay, here's where we have to adjust. Here's where we have to whatever. But with the window, like with Line and Gaudreau and those kind of top end players, I think you have to push. You have to find a way to do it. And it starts with
wrap this
bringing
up.
in two big defensemen. Is,
yeah. Let's finish up with one last question.
Sure.
Knee-jerk reaction. Do the Blue Jackets make the playoffs this season?
I don't think so.
No.
No, but but it's
I think they'll take a step. I don't know if they're going to be a playoff team.
Yeah. Here's my fireback question. What's the goaltending tandem for them?
Right now it's Elvis Merzlikins and Neil Tarasov.
Right. Okay.
If Elvis is good, then this team is going to be fine. If Elvis continues to struggle, I think this team is going to be dicey.
Yeah. I think, like, as we've talked before and we've talked in years past, and I've really talked about Columbus needing glue players. Players that, like I said, sort out the people, and it usually does come from centermen. It comes from guys in the middle of the ice showing that they can control the pace of the game and they can control the game in all situations, being harder matchups, being able to do that. And so I think Columbus has to continue to find those players. I think they went from a lot of injuries, losing Werenski pretty much all year. Like there's a lot of things with this team that if it goes right, it could go very right. And so I think that's the excitement, right? Right. Like that's the excitement. Yeah. And so it's the excitement is like, what if it does work?
Yeah.
What if bringing in Severson and Provorov does spark quality play from both of them? What if you do get a healthy Werenski all season long? What if you do get a really good season from Alex Texier and he gels? What if you get a good push from a player like Cole Sillinger? What if you get a really good push from a player like Kent Johnson? So there's a lot of things that could absolutely very much go right for Columbus. You just want a bunch of them to go right. And it's an exciting time, I think, to be a fan. But it's also anytime that there is a difference between what could happen and what should happen, it ends up creating just some frustrating nights, which is just the beautiful part of sports. You go, we could be so good and we're not good. That's
been this team the entire time I've been hosting this podcast. Is they could be so good and they just keep tripping over themselves. It's fine. They're doing their best. Yeah. I believe in them. If people want to catch up with the WHL, they want to catch up with maybe some Denton Mateychuk talk occasionally, or check out the rest of the WHL prospects that are going to be going in the draft on Wednesday, because the draft is in 6 days. I don't know how time works anymore. Where can people find you and your work online?
So on Twitter, I go by Dad Hockey Doe, and that's just always from, it goes back to people being like, oh, basketball, football. And I'm like, yeah, but Dad Hockey Doe. And so that's kind of how the name came from that. And so you can find me on Twitter under that handle. I'm constantly talking about prospects in Western Canada. And then from there, you can go to FC Hockey, where all of our work there on the top 300 prospects plus in the draft. Draft profiles, catching up on prospects as well in their follow-up years. So there's some work there from a lot of great writers. And then the mass majority of my work is found at puckpreps.com. Puckpreps.com, which is just, it is one where it really focuses on NCAA and CHL play. So you can, if you're very interested in who's coming next year and the year to come, we have draft rankings, profiles, all sorts of things, which come down to the WHL draft, people going to the BCHL who are going to be high-end stars, guys that are making their way to NCAA and everything in between.
Yes. If you want to learn about guys from 2007, if the 2004 guys don't make you feel old enough, Puck Preps is the place to go.
Well, that's the thing is so I'm going into this next year as we're coming in the calendar. I'm going to be focusing on the next crop of WHL draft eligible players, which is the 2009 group.
Oh,
so it is quite a far further away. But that being said, it's really nice to kind of follow these players, right? So like the 2006s, they're coming into the WHL now. We're starting to see some kind of breakout stars from them. The Berkeley Cattons, the Jordan Gavins, some of those guys and guys kind of getting their feet wet. Some of them aren't going to be eligible, Jordan Gavin and Roger McQueen. Some of those guys aren't eligible until next year, like till the year after, because they're late birthdays. But it gives you a sense of those kind of players, and not only that, you get to see the trajectory. Like I said, so when I come on here and I talk to you about someone like Nate Danielson, who's had multiple years in the WHL already, we can talk about what they were like as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old, and it provides good context.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of fun. Well, I appreciate you coming to talk about WHL kids, and maybe we'll connect after the draft if the Blue Jackets pick another one. It's been done before, so
they will make a wild swing. They will take a fun player, that much I know.
They love to do that.
I really want to see them do something very unexpected at 3. I just don't think they will.
No, I don't. No, stop it. And that's all I've got for you today. Tomorrow, we're going to come back with another prospect profile. And we're just going to keep it on rolling all the way through to the draft, which is in like 4 days, right? By now, Jesus Christ, it's really coming up. So more prospect profiles coming your way. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at _LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Hayden will be back next week. I promise. He is on vacation this week. That is why he is not here. He will be back next week. And thank you for listening, for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, Locked on Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms. We are over on YouTube. We are on Sirius XM. Anywhere you want to listen to Locked on Blue Jackets, you can listen to Locked on Blue Jackets. That is our guarantee. So check us out. Subscribe, comment, like, review, whatever floats your boat. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.